Good evening and welcome to the May 9, 2018 Civil Service Commission meeting. Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarty?
Present.
Commissioner Devine?
Here.
Chair Karian?
Here.
For the record, Commissioner Gazarian is absent.
Thank you. What's next?
Minutes for the meeting of April 11, 2018.
Move to approve, dispense from reading? Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair Karian?
Yes. We have oral communication on general items not on the agenda. Anyone? There's no one. What's next?
Recruitment and examination report.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is your regular monthly report indicating our recruitment activity. As you can see, very busy times. Recently, we have undertaken an effort to sort of aggressively tackle some of the long-term vacancies citywide. We've met with all of our city departments and tried to get a sense of priorities and determine which positions are ready to move forward on. So this list has actually grown a little bit from the past two previous months. So we're up to it's about 70 processes currently, but again, we're actively tackling these, and hopefully we'll see some results in the next few months. With that, this is a note and file item, but if you have any questions on any of these processes, be happy to try and answer those for you.
Any questions? No questions. What's next?
Eligible list established.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission.
Why is this so loud? Excuse me. Can we turn this down a little bit?
Because you're a person of authority.
Exactly.
Let's just do this. Is that better? Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is also a note and file item. These are our eligible lists that have been established since our last meeting. And it actually covers 2 months because the last month's report was pushed to this month. Again, a lot of activity that you're seeing over this period of time, an establishment of 22 lists, 9 of those open processes, 12 promotional, and 1 promotional and open. As I said earlier, this is a note and file item. If you have questions, again, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Any questions? Okay, what's next?
Job bulletin for approval. Director of Library, Arts and Culture.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, I'd like to try and take these possibly together, although they will require separate votes. But what we have here are 2 bulletins for approval. These are executive level positions, the first being Director of Library, Arts and Culture, the other being a Chief Information Officer, which is the head of our Information Services Department.
Could I ask that we read the second item into the record as well if you're going to discuss them in tandem?
Job bulletin for approval. Chief Information Officer.
Okay. We have these vacancies, members of the Commission. The more recent of the 2 is an announcement by our long-term library director, Ms. Cindy Cleary, who's been around for about 36 years. She is retiring at the end of June, so we therefore would like to move ahead with both of these. The civil service rules do require Commission approval for all of our executive level job bulletins. Upon approval by the Commission, we intend to open these bulletins, both of them, on Monday. We haven't quite figured out the duration of the opening, whether it be just a few weeks or a month or whatever, but Ms. Beers and I will figure that out. But we do hope to do some extensive advertising and outreach for both of these processes and hopefully wrap up these by June and July. We are very anxious to proceed. The bulletins, as far as their essential functions, the minimum requirements, are fully consistent with the approved class specifications. We do have the selection process identified on the bulletin. We're proposing to have a three-part panel for the Director of Library, Arts and Culture, and a 2-part panel for Chief Information Officer. And the only difference between the 2 would be the library position would have a community panel, whereas we're recommending that the Chief Information Officer not, because it's it's primarily an internal service function, and there's not a great deal of engagement with the community in that particular field. So with that, these items are here for your consideration. If you have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. We do have Ms. Spears here this evening, as well as our newly minted Assistant City Manager, Mr. Rubik Galanian. And I'm sure he would love to come up and say a few words. So, anyway, Mr. Chair.
First of all, I wanted to congratulate Mr. Galanian. Congratulations. It's a great job, well-deserved. We've never congratulated Ms. Spears for her appointment, and then we have Chief in the back. We have a brand-new management team sitting here today, so congratulations to everyone from the community. Mr. Coleman.
Coleman.
I'm so sorry. I went back a few years.
This is Mark McCarley.
Sorry, Mark. I apologize.
That's fine. Just a
Mr.
technical
McCarley.
question addressed to our executive. On the oral assessment panels, we have 3 for the librarian and 2 for the IO information officer. Are we applying objective criteria to those panels? Meaning, what are the weight factors associated? For instance, with the librarian, we have a community panel, we have a technical panel, and if I recall, I'll turn the page.
Internal organization panel.
Right, the organizational panel. And we've discussed this across the board last month when we addressed issues regarding police promotions, and I'm very interested in the manner in which our panels are scored. Objective, subjective, or a combination of both?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, these would be certainly a combination of both. The important thing for all of these is that the questions, the process be appropriately job-related. However, when we're dealing with an interview format, there's always going to be some level of subjectivity entered into it, but the questions will be put together to address the specific areas of each of these respective jobs, and the particular emphasis, depending on which panel, will write the questions differently. To answer your question as well, all of these panels will be equally weighted. So in the case of the library position, it'll be basically 1/3 professional panel, 1/3 internal panel, and 1/3 community panel. With the chief information officer, it'll be 50-50 with a professional technical panel and the internal organization panel.
And we anticipate a scoring 1, 2, 3, for instance, or best candidate ultimately to be submitted to the selection official, the city manager.
That's correct. The candidates will be required to pass each of those panels, as it says in the report, with a minimum score of 70%, and then those scores will be combined. We'll establish an eligibility list, and that'll be presented to Ms. Beers for her final consideration. As you recall, we operated under a rule of 3, so ideally we'll have 3 candidates for Ms. Beers to consider.
Okay. Are we done?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr.
Okay, I have a follow-up question on to Mr. McCarley's questions regarding the panels, and in particular the community panel. And I would like to make a suggestion or a request, and hopefully my colleagues will go along with it, that number 1, on the selection of the community panel, that the city council members be contacted and given an opportunity to submit names of people they feel from the community would be best suited to serve on the community panel. And the second request or suggestion would be that once the community panel is selected, that they be given an opportunity to submit questions that they feel would be appropriate to ask based on their experience in their particular community. I've talked with people that have been on these panels before, and some of them have expressed concern that they were given questions by staff. And I realize that all the questions have to be asked of every candidate, and they have to be job-related. But some of the members felt that they had questions that they would have liked to have asked and weren't able to. So I would like to suggest that we require that they be allowed or given an opportunity to submit questions, and then vetted through Mr. Doyle and Ms. Beers.
Okay.
Would,
McCarley?
yeah, fellow Commissioner, Mr. Devine, would you entertain a motion to incorporate that suggestion and elevate it to a motion for the purposes of discussion?
I would do that.
Then I move.
Okay, motion and a move. Any questions,
I'd like
comments?
to hear from both Mr. Doyle and Ms. Beers as to whether or not those would be an impediment to the process.
Good afternoon, Chair Carrion, members of the commission. It's a pleasure to be before you this afternoon. Yasmin Beers, City Manager for the City of Glendale. I was going to say Chair Devine, Commissioner Devine, members of the commission. I absolutely have no problem, and I already anticipated asking the City Council to give me names for the panel. So I absolutely have no problem asking the City Council to give me suggestions, and if availability works for the folks that they do provide, we would have those individuals on the community panel. In terms of the questions, I think it's a great idea to ask the community panelists to provide questions to Mr. Doyle in advance, and if it's within the purview of the job specification and it's legal to ask the question, we will most definitely include some of those questions as part of the interview process. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's, Mr. Doyle, do you want to make any comments?
How can I improve upon that? Members of the commission, that should not be a problem at all. When we do these processes, it's often, there's a lot going on, and efforts to control the process and make sure that, of course, the questions are appropriately job related are number one in our mind. But so in the past, we have always done sort of the heavy lifting on our own and try to make things as easy as possible for those coming in and spending their day with us, and we give them the questions. And then, you get into this situation where the questions that get asked, you need to make sure everyone's asked the same questions in the same manner. So we have been a little rigid on that, but if there is the opportunity in advance to solicit input from those who've offered to serve, we'd certainly accept that. And as Commissioner Devine says, they would need to be fully vetted and obviously make sure that they are appropriately job related and legal, that sort of thing. We would make sure of that. But again, I have no opposition to your motion whatsoever.
So I would second Mr. McCarley's motion.
Okay, so there's a first and a second. Do we know what the motion was, what ended up being?
The motion was to add to the process 2 steps. The first is to seek from city council members or to provide city council members an opportunity to make suggestions for candidates to serve on the oral panel. And the second one was to, after the panel was selected, to ask those participants to submit their own questions for vetting.
Okay.
And also, I'd like to add, since we're going to save some time, I'd like to move that we approve both job bulletins.
Okay, could we just do the motion, because I have one question. I want to take one thing out of here that's bugging me. So could we do that, and then we just have, it will take us an extra 10 seconds. So first and a second, could we call or get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Menuchyan?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair Carrion?
Yes.
And I move that we...
And just let me just, I wanted to make one comment, I'm sorry, before you make the motion. On the Director of Library bulletin, I said this last time, and it just kind of bothers me. It says skills in applying common sense and logic in decision making. Do we really need to put that in? Seriously, I mean, just because there's a spot for it, what does that mean? I don't know what it means. I mean, who could, applying common sense and logic in decision making? I mean, I'm hoping that would be, but I just like to take that out. It just will make it a cleaner, it would just flow better if you just didn't have that one sentence there. So minus taking that sentence out,
I would make that motion.
Okay.
In your motion to incorporate the deletion of common sense from
Yeah.
the job bulletin.
Yeah. All right, so motion and second, could we, on both items, Director of Library, Arts and Culture, and Chief Information Officer, could we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Menuchyan?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair Karian?
Yes. Just wanted to also mention before we move any further, due to the fact that Mr. Gazarian is not here, and because we wanted everyone to actually be here for items 14, 15, and 16, I was just notified by Mr. Menuchyan that he will be on the next meeting in June. And so if items 14, 15, and 16, unless if anyone's going to be absent, if you can move those to the June meeting, it will not be discussed tonight. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone's
I
okay
have
with
no
that.
objection, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Okay, no objections from anyone. Those items are moved to the next meeting on the second week in June. Mr. Doyle for the next item.
Class specification for approval, paralegal.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a class specification for the newly established classification of paralegal. It's probably a little hard to believe that we don't yet have a paralegal
really.
classification after all these years, but our city attorney's office has operated under a variety of different structures over the years. I do know years ago that they have utilized paralegals, but they were often brought in and utilizing some generic classifications such as administrative assistant and administrative analyst. And those classifications were never quite a good fit and often would present challenges in both the recruiting the right people, and then of course there's the whole issue of if there's ever a layoff bumping process where you might lose somebody who has these paralegal skills to somebody who does not, if it ever came to that. So what this is an effort to properly classify this position, go out and recruit for somebody with for a paralegal with its own specific duties and minimum requirements based on the industry standards. So with that, this is here for your consideration. Be happy to answer your questions you may have on them. We also have Ms. Ann Maurer, who's our Chief Assistant City Attorney for Litigation, is here to assist.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Just reflecting on the classification. The classification, of course, culminates in the highest echelon individuals within the city attorney's office, the city attorney, deputy city attorneys, and then works through next category being after attorneys, the professional staff. We would have this particular position called paralegal. Presently, according to the classification established, we have secretaries, executive assistants. What's that next category, which is at the present point in time filling in and performing the duties that are now outlined within this new classification?
I'd like to have Ms. Maurer get into the specifics of that. Again, the department has had various organizations over the years, and she can probably best address the current iteration.
Good evening, Chair Abkarian and members of the commission. I would say technically no one specifically is doing these duties. It's basically me and the other litigation attorney in our office who's a second year. So the first element is about claims handling, and Cassandra Alexander, who was sort of our office manager, was doing that, and she is no longer with us. And so when she left, I took that on. And so as far as all of the litigation work, we just do it ourselves, the two litigation attorneys.
In essence, if I could comment, it appears that there might be efficiency, and I would assume, because I haven't seen detail, that the cost associated with a paralegal would be slightly less than the cost associated with a senior associate already
It's
doing that work.
substantially less.
Or an associate, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's substantially less.
So that is a potential cost savings for the city, and that your efforts in your present capacity would be devoted to, let's say, a bit higher level activities in the scale of legal functions.
That's the hope, yes.
And is it one paralegal that
Yes.
you anticipate
Just one.
for a staff? Your present staff, professional staff is 6? I can't keep track of it. I apologize to you.
4, right? The front office staff?
Staff are professional and unclassified.
So the entire
Yeah.
department, how many people in the entire department?
11 attorneys?
11
and then
attorneys and 4
4
support staff.
support staff.
Oh, you are
pretty
running
lean
very
right now.
lean
We
at
are.
that. Since you have so many attorneys up here, that's incredibly lean.
Yes, it is, and just 2 of us doing litigation. Everyone else does transactional
Oh
work.
my gosh. And it's expected that the paralegal will focus not only on claims but litigation support to
Yes,
make your
exactly.
life a bit easier.
Yes, that's the plan.
You have some personal self-interest in this,
A
all
little
right.
bit, Yes.
Any other questions? Mr. Wine? Mr. Minigan? I just have one question. The education level, it says bachelor's degree and a paralegal studies with the ABA approval. Was that done intentionally? Because I know a lot of paralegals who do incredible legal work and don't have a bachelor's degree but have completed paralegal school with ABA-approved paralegal studies, and it took them a while to do it. But I don't know, do you want to limit it to a bachelor's degree? Because sometimes some of these paralegals do such an incredible job, and some don't have bachelor's degrees.
I honestly don't have an opinion about it one way or another. I think that part came from HR, so I think you're right. There's people who have been doing it for a long time who might not have a degree who would be excellent.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if there was a reason why HR did that.
Mr. Chair, let me point out, it's the bachelor's degree or
Oh, it says, I didn't see the order, I'm sorry.
an associate degree with the.
With the completion of the ABA. Okay.
If you're not comfortable
No.
with an associate degree, either, again, our belief would be that a lot of these folks would have had some formal education, either a BA or an AA, but, you know.
It's your, no, the bachelor was the only thing that I just didn't see the or associate degree and an ABA. I didn't see that. So whatever is your decision, whatever Ms. Maurer is going to have these people with her, so whatever her decision is, I will support.
I mean, I think we'd want to get the biggest pool we could.
I would think so.
I don't know, maybe we should consider making it or the equivalent experience. I don't know that we usually do that.
I would incorporate that, Mr. Chair. That would enhance, I think, further what your objectives are, to provide the broadest possible candidate pool. And there are, since some of us are indeed hiring paralegals, a pool of paralegals who have substantial experience from major law firms, who have nothing but a high school diploma, but years of experience.
Right.
And that would give you a greater opportunity to choose the appropriate person for your staff.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
There is a note on it's a couple of lines down from where the education is addressed, and we could perhaps enhance that portion. The note indicates that an equivalent combination of experience, education, and/or training may substitute for the listed minimum requirements. We could supplement that by saying, an extensive, experience in the field, in the profession may substitute for the educational requirement completely, and just be a little more explicit on that.
Yeah. I still have a problem with the bachelor's degree portion of it. It's like you ask for this, then you say ABA, or I think you just say Associate of Art degree plus completion of a concentrated curriculum in paralegal studies from the American Bar Association. Then it gives her a much bigger pool. If somebody has a bachelor's degree and they have it, they can still apply. So I would just take that entire bachelor's degree requirement, because it really, when you see that on the first sentence, it's a bit of a turn off if you're a paralegal, and kind of scary, even though you have the or. I would just say Associate of Art degree plus completion of concentrated curriculum of paralegal studies from an ABA school, and add to it that an equivalent combination of experience and all that could substitute the Associated Art degree.
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Certainly, that's fine.
Does that work with everyone?
Concur, Mr.
We
Chair.
knew, we knew that
Move
with.
to approve based on that
With
recommendation.
the changes. Move in second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair Karian?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. What's next?
Class specification for approval, Power System Operator Series.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a class specification for a new series within our Water and Power department. It's the Power System Operator Series. And this is replacing what's currently known as the Electrical System Dispatch Series. These are the employees who work out of what's known as Howard Substation. That's the kind of an old classic style building right at the entrance of the of our parking structure, just on the right. And these individuals work 24/7 monitoring the power system to ensure that power gets purchased, scheduled, and essentially delivered to our residents. And again, it's 24/7 round the clock. The previous series that I had referenced before, Electrical Systems Dispatcher, really did need to be overhauled and brought up to date with some of the new technologies and the methods of power delivery. Additionally, with this, we're also adding a sort of a trainee level position to the series, which will be a good classification that will enable us to look at the employees on an entry-level basis and determine whether or not they're ready to advance to some of the more journey level positions. One thing that we found in this profession is, as I keep saying, it's 24/7. They work 12-hour shifts through the night, and there's a 12-hour shift a day, a 12-hour shift at night, and they have to work, all the holidays, weekends, and all that. And oftentimes we get candidates who are interested in the job. They seem interested. They look at the salary, of course, and think, wow, this would be wonderful. But then they get in there and they realize it doesn't fit into their lifestyle. It's hard to, you miss some of your kids', athletic events or school events and things like that, or you're not around for the holidays. And we see I don't want to say a lot of turnover, but a lot of individuals get into this job and then they turn away and go back to whatever it is they were doing before. So I think the trainee level will enable us to truly have some time to look at the candidates, determine whether it's a good fit for them and for the organization, and then have us a better opportunity for long-term success. So with that, the series includes 4 classifications from the trainee all the way up to the mid-management level position of the principal power system operator. And if you have questions on this, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you. We do have representatives from Glendale Water and Power here. Mr. Chad Edgington, who is the electrical dispatch supervisor, and his boss, who's Mark Young, with the department, as well as Mr. Vardanian from my staff, who helped put this together.
Ms. McCullough?
Is the expected outcome that the classification, now known as electrical system dispatcher, that series of classifications will be eliminated?
That's correct, sir.
And if I heard you correctly, the benefit is this new classification would in fact incorporate a hierarchy beginning with a trainee position. The trainee progresses forward, showing appropriate competence, and then finds him or herself at the power system operator level 3, I presume, 1, 2, and then wide open.
It goes 1, 2, and that's exactly correct. Right now, there is no trainee, so we do these recruitments, and we would be bringing people in at what would be the operator 1 level, and our thought would be let's do a trainee and see how that goes, and then have the ability to advance them. If they're working out, if it seems to be a good fit and they're catching on, fits in with their lifestyle, then the succession to the next level would be relevant.
Of course, it's really inappropriate to use reference to the civilian area, but on the other hand, we do not have a position akin to an apprentice within the power generation segment of our Department of Water and Power.
No, sir.
So we have no such facility to allow a young man or to come on board with the city of Glendale, learn the specifics of the art and science of power generation. So it's just, we have a classification and that person applies, and we hope to heck that that man or woman has the requisite skills to perform at a desired level of competence.
That's exactly
Now,
correct.
this is pretty broad. I'll tell you, some of the requirements to include coordination with local, state, and federal government agencies, that implies to me that the requisite skill level is pretty high.
There's a lot to learn, definitely. And we do make heavy use of the apprenticeship programs, mostly at the yard, at the Utility Operations Center for our electrical linemen, our water mechanics, our power plant personnel, but there isn't a program, a comparable program that I'm aware of that does this kind of work.
And I think you indicated that you did talk to IBEW,
Yes.
which is, of course, the source of
Yes.
a lot of information about this. We do have private power generation companies, Southern Cal Edison being one of them. Is there a template that we can refer to, not to incorporate what SCE does, but looking at it across the board in both development of a young man and woman into a qualified power operator, and how perhaps we could have a pool of apprentices that begin a training program within civil service here at Glendale, and over the course of a year to 3 years or 4 years, as a typical apprenticeship might be with IBEW, then at the end of that, they then find themselves in this classification scheme for the specific function of power operator. And then, of course, you'd have the specific function of lineman, and then you a line person, then you'd have a specific function for something else. Sort of a bit of a different way of looking at classification.
I think so, Commissioner McCarley, and as I said, the department has worked extensively with IBW and amongst our team to put together such a program, and that's still more or less in the works. Maybe one of the two gentlemen could
That would be
get into
helpful.
that a bit.
Would
The
be
intent
interesting.
here would be not a 2-3 year, but a 1 year as a trainee, and you'll see in a subsequent item on this agenda, a lot of our positions do have a 6-month probation, but we're proposing that this be a 1-year probation in order to allow that level of learning and education. But I think either Mr. Young
Yeah,
or
I would
Mr.
appreciate
Edgington
the
could just
input.
describe what they have in mind for
Yeah.
this training period, some of the skills that they would be taught.
Hi, I'm Chad Edgington with the electrical dispatch. Yes, what we have is the trainee position is we've divided into 4 areas of learning, and what we do is they come in and they learn 3 months, they learn this area, and then another 3 months they learn another area. So we have it in four qualified areas, and then after that we evaluate them and see if they're able to obtain the information in which we've given them, and then also that they're able to perform the situation. What happens is you're talking a generator guy. This is great. We know generation, we know water and power, we know what it happens is this is a position that's unique.
Is this grid management?
It's grid management, it's inside, it's outside, it's everything. So our position is kind of like, we don't want an apprenticeship program because it just takes too long. And this would give us an advantage of taking a year and being able to, a man or woman, and seeing if they're able to fit into our training technique and what we like.
I really appreciate that comment. I can now conclude that what you're doing is really formalizing an ad hoc training program that you have had in place for any number of years, and now you're formalizing it.
Right.
Would that be a fair statement on your part?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we have 36 different things that you need to learn for the city of Glendale, and we have each of them lined out and broken into 3-month increments and how to learn it.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay,
It's an excellent idea, so anyone want to
Move to approve.
all four?
I'll move.
Move to approve.
You want a second?
Yeah,
It's a series.
second.
Take
Yeah,
one.
the
It's a
whole-
series.
One
I
motion.
move, second the motion.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Menuchyan,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley,
Yes.
Commissioner Devine,
Yes.
Chair Karian.
Yes. What's next?
Adoption of resolution, report on unclassified status proposal for police communications trainee.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a resolution being brought before you to declare a position unclassified. This is a rare request, and I do mean rare. We don't bring many of these to you. We are asking the commission to declare the newly established classification of police communications trainee to be unclassified. What that means is it would be unclassified, exempt from the civil service, the typical civil service rules. And when I say rare, I do mean it. I can probably think of probably less than 5 positions or classifications citywide that are declared unclassified. Some of our apprenticeship positions that have a multi-year training and development that we can't just have a traditional probationary period. In the second or third year, we'd have to have the ability to remove someone if they aren't quite cutting it in that profession. We also have our police officer recruit is an unclassified position, the recruit level. Once they get to officer, that becomes a position. But
Reserves also?
reserves are in a different category altogether, as they are essentially volunteers and at will. But really, the two things that are important here, really the biggest thing would be the amount of time that we would need to develop candidates in this profession of police communications. We look at positions that we have to fill, and the success rate of people that we hire, and this is one of the most challenging ones, if not the most challenging one of all. It may not have the sort of the glitz and glamour of a police officer position, but it is an incredibly challenging job. The environment is such where you're dealing with emergency situations constantly over a 12-hour shift. There's very intense level of training that has to occur in a relatively short period of time. And similar to the previous item, typically a 6-month to a 1-year probationary period just isn't going to cut it for this profession. And that's what I'm hearing from both the employee association, the supervisors, as well as the police management, and Chief Povolitis is here to address that. But they need additional time, and the establishment of this position as an unclassified job would give us a period of time that could extend beyond 6 months or even beyond a year in order to determine if somebody has the overall fitness to be a police dispatcher. So that's the primary benefit of this. We would not be bringing this to you unless we had complete buy-in from our employee association, and I believe we do, and we have representatives from the GCA here tonight as well.
I see them shaking their heads, meaning yes, I'm assuming, not saying no, meaning yes.
So how this would work is similar to police officer recruit. We would hire individuals in at the trainee level, and this is, of course, after the entire selection process, the eligibility list, background investigation, the medical exam, and the psychological exam, and they would begin as a trainee in the program, and as long as it takes for them to become proficient and competent in this, then we would, when they're ready, we would move them on to the police communications operator position, which more or less is what we would refer to as a journey level position, and then at that point they would become part of the classified service. So with that, a lot of work has gone into this with Mr. Chavez from my staff, Chief Povolitis, the Employee Association, and we'd like to see if perhaps the chief could come up and elaborate a little more on the program and the need for doing this. This has been one of his highest priorities as both interim chief and as the new chief. So, Chief.
Good evening, Chair Abkarian, members of the Civil Service Commission, Carl Politis, Police Chief.
Nice to hear you say that.
Get to drop the interim part. This is one of our top priorities, just to kind of lay a little bit of background for you. I have 22 positions authorized in the Communications Center, 6 of which are vacant at this point. The market is extremely competitive. Being able to hire people who will be successful in that environment is a challenge for us, and we need to be able to move faster than our competition, because everybody, like police officers, everybody is in the same market for a very limited pool of qualified candidates. So we'd like to thank you for, at the last meeting, approving the trainee position, because that is based on feedback from meeting with the people who are doing the training, the supervisors and the peers in the dispatch center, saying we need more time to train. The job has become more complex than the couple hours a night I would occasionally spend helping dispatch calls, where for my thing it's like, okay, something happened, I'd stand up and yell at the radio operator, send a car this way, I'll figure out how to get it the computer in a minute. But the ability to deal with all of the research that needs to be done on behalf of the officers in the field, to deal with the phone calls coming in, to deal with all the technology that's out there and the information that's out there to pull that together, has made this job extremely complex. But we're subject to the same background requirements that everything else is for the police department, and so we lose a lot of people in that process. So the ability to get through large numbers of people, I haven't looked at the exact percentages, but police officers, were hiring about 1% of the people who actually participate in the process. This is very, very similar, and so the ability to move to an unclassified position so that we can hand out more background packages and work our way through that system fast enough before somebody else picks them up is absolutely critical. As I said, I look at police officers and I look at this position, and we're looking to do the same thing. We're looking to hire people, because right now we actually have mandatory overtime in our dispatch center, because that's in order to maintain the staffing levels. Can only do that for so long before we burn people out, and they won't be able to help us out anymore. And I think we're at that critical point. So we're looking to hire people, and we're looking to diversify the department at the same time. And I think this process will allow us to do that, and do that effectively. I guess I've kind of made it a connection to, we're looking for nuggets of gold. And so sometimes we need to move a lot of ore, if you will, or a lot of dirt in order to find those nuggets that come through. And so, we'll have 140 people apply. We'll be lucky if we get a couple out of that. We'll do the next stack. And so this process will help us do that, and that's why we're asking your approval.
Chief, I fully understand the need for this accelerated hiring process to fill positions that have been unfilled for a long period of time. It's a dynamic solution to a very critical problem. What do you envision as the selection process for these unclassified trainees? Meaning, is it we get 150 applicants, hopefully, and then you would appoint an interview officer? There's no testing involved.
No, there is a test in this. Being a communications operator, you really truly have to multitask. I know I was talking to our now civilian commander, Cheryl Davis Moore, who's sitting back there. But this is one of those where it's like, picture yourself doing this, sit in front of the TV, watch what's going on the TV, turn on a radio, and type what's happening on the radio. You have to have that level of skill. So in order to get people into the process that have a shot at doing this, we have a testing process that starts to test their ability to multitask. Once they get through that, we do have an oral panel, then they hit the list, then they go through the background process. This is an extremely challenging job.
So, Chief, how much of this selection process will be eliminated using this accelerated format?
None.
You're still going to run a background on these?
We're still going to run the I'll call it a practical test, or the written function of the test. We will still do the oral panel. We will still do the background investigation. What the unclassified allows us to do, because normally we only get 3 names for each position. And if you give me, if I go, I want one position and you give me 3 names, and if all 3 of them wipe out in the backgrounds and we go through all of that, and then I need to move to number 4 and to number 5 and to number 6, by the time I get to number 6, and maybe that's the one that makes it through the background, they're hired by somebody else. And so this way, kind of like police officer recruits, we didn't change the process. We still work our way down the list, but now when they leave the oral panel, we hand them all a background package to start filling it out so that we can move that quickly. As I said, we have got to move faster than our competition, and we have to be much more agile.
Chief, let me just also understand, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Just to follow up to your question.
Yeah.
Also, they don't have a vested interest in the job, so if they're screwing up, they can't cut it, they're having major problems, you can, so to speak, let them go without them having a vested interest and having civil service rights to come in front of us.
That's correct. And it is an extremely challenging job. And I tell you what, we have a very vested interest in getting people in here who can succeed. As I said, I know the people that are working in our communication center, they're getting tired. And so we have very much a vested interest in doing that. So this is one piece of a multifaceted program, including looking at our training program, extending it, building it, trying to reduce the stress levels on the trainees so that they can actually learn, retain, and function.
Did you finish?
It's good, yes.
Are you sure?
Go ahead.
Sam has.
No, I'll wait,
Sam, go
I'll wait,
ahead.
I'll wait.
Okay.
I need to see it. Okay.
In the unclassified position, are they entitled to benefits? Do they get PERS and?
Yes, sir. They're entitled to all of the same benefits that a salaried employee.
And then in essence, they're at will. In other words, they can be let go without a civil service process.
That's correct.
And I noticed that you have here that if any of them contest a decision that's made about them, they can appeal to the HR director.
Certainly,
Okay.
yes.
But that would not transcend into appealing to the commission because they're not civil service oriented.
That's correct. We would try to treat them as we would any employee. Certainly, if somebody's struggling, we would, the supervisors would counsel them and work with them, all the things that we would normally do. But what this does is it does not provide them an avenue to formally appeal a removal to the general stages of discipline, which would mean a Skelly process, ultimately to civil service. And I'm glad the chief pointed out the additional side benefit, which I didn't really emphasize. The side benefit of upfront in the recruitment process, when we establish that list, their ability to jump on this process right away and take 5, 6 people at a time, put them through the background and get the ball rolling on that before these individuals get hired elsewhere. So that's another good point.
And one last thing, the chief mentioned that the new commander is sitting back there. I have not had the pleasure of being introduced to or meeting her, and I would certainly appreciate coming up. And I don't know if my colleagues have met her or
No.
so.
She's walking right there.
Walking up here. Hello, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Cheryl
Your name?
Davis Moore,
Oh,
the new Civilian Divisional Commander at the Police Department. Hello.
congratulations.
Nice to meet you all.
Pleasure meeting you.
Thank you very much.
You have a
Appreciate it.
great chief. You're going to do very well.
Absolutely.
And she's going to be a great addition to our team.
She will be. Sam?
Just a couple of things. First of all, Chief, congratulations. I don't know anybody else who's more worthy to wear that badge. You've earned it, and it's a pleasure to have you in our community as our police chief. Number 2, regarding this position, I think that this is a great idea. One of the reasons is throughout the years that I've been on this commission, there's been one position that I've noticed it's been the hardest to deal with, and it's this position. One of the things that, this has always been an opening, and one of the elements that even if you go through and through background, you get hired, after a certain period of time, one thing that I've noticed, the job is so stressful, they end up just, and rightfully so. So I'm in fully support of this, and I think it's a great way of dealing with this. And that's it.
Well, right.
And this would be addressed to our city attorney, and that is that certainly I'm in support of any action that can facilitate and support our department, our police department. I'm just concerned because this is an interesting development. It's a progressive development in human resources staffing of a police department. And in fact, this concept could be extended to other entry-level positions within the employment community here at Glendale. Do we have any legality issues with respect to circumventing, to use that perhaps inappropriate phrase, circumventing civil services articulated both in the labor code and through our civil service regulations by doing this? It is a progressive action. I'm just concerned if there's any potential.
Commissioner McCarley, there is a provision within the city charter that allows for that, and so you'll find in your packet a resolution, a proposed resolution. As Mr. Doyle said, it is a rare occasion when this comes up, and every time the position is converted to an unclassified position, it has to come before this body, and you'd have to deliberate on whether or not to authorize that. So it's anticipated within the charter, it's anticipated within the rules, and you've got a proposed resolution to facilitate its adoption.
You're comfortable across the board based upon experience, the limited number that we have. It's interesting if we were to expand that number and find ourselves unclassifying several entry-level positions in which there's a deficit of potential candidates. Interesting as we move forward in a new understanding of civil service and employment within a municipality.
Just to give you a little bit of background, going back to a number of years ago when I was in the Civil Service Commission, we actually
You're
had
still in the commission.
when I was in the commission, then I left and I came back. There was a very large pool of people in the city of Glendale. Mr. Doyle remembers. Mr. Coleman, that's why I said Coleman. Actually was a champion on that, where he basically said these people should not be unclassified employees. There was a huge list of maybe 16 different categories. And we brought them all in, and we made them all classified. So,
And didn't you guys put a provision that after a certain number of hours they work, they can no longer be classified?
and that was already, I think it was just a glitch when Mr. Doyle was just coming in. Person prior to Mr. Doyle, how can I forget his name? Mr. Hoffman, King of Glendale. Mr. Hoffman was here, and he had instituted that, and so we had that, and I think it was very clear that that's not something that we wanted to go back to.
Yeah, for the benefit of the rest of the commissioners who weren't there at the time, as the chair says, we had a big group of unclassified employees, and the rationale was these were federally funded positions. These were people that worked in community development, block grants, and the idea being, well, we need to make them unclassified because what if we lost funding for those jobs? They'd be, we'd have to, lay them off, let them go without, due process and without the, the layoff procedures and all that. And the irony was that some of these people worked for the city for 15, 20, 25, even 30 years. The security of these federally funded employees was more so than our general fund employees. So it seemed a little odd and ironic to call these people unclassified. So as the chair indicates, we did pretty much eliminate that whole program. And as I've said earlier, I think we have maybe 5 or 6 classifications citywide that fall under this category. And I think that's appropriate. And Mr. McCarley, I wouldn't foresee a broad application of this throughout the organization. If we do see an appropriate, another area where it might seem appropriate, obviously we would discuss that with the employee association and bring it here. But again, we don't anticipate any broad application.
We don't see any groundswell of enthusiasm for unclassifying a significant number of positions because that would change our relationship with our employees significantly.
Yes.
It's almost tantamount to just going out on contract for some positions.
Yes.
So with respect to this limited job series in which there is an exigent requirement, it's a different story.
Commissioner Devine.
Okay, with that, I would like to again welcome our new commander, and nice meeting you, and move for approval of the resolution.
Second.
Move in a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair Perrin.
Yes. What's next?
Public hearing, resolution for entrance level classifications.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, we have 3 resolutions in succession here, and these are resolutions we like to bring every couple of years periodically to address certain aspects of the civil service. The first being a declaration of the organization's entrance level classifications. What this is an effort to really identify and establish what are our entry-level classification. By and large, these are classifications of the city service that really have no prior experience requirement, thus they are truly entry-level. And what we'd like to do is update this resolution now with some of the new classifications that have been established over the years, and you'll see those on the 2-page resolution. Those are underlined, and then there are some that are being eliminated from this. The significance of Declaration of Entry-Level Classifications is, one, entrance-level classifications are eligible for veterans preference, veterans credits. Number 2, the entry-level classifications are, by definition, we're allowed to post them as open recruitment bulletins, irregardless of how they were recruited for in its previous iteration. As you recall, a lot of times we bring bulletins to you for approval when it was previously recruited for promotionally, and we're changing it to open. And we like to do that to give potential candidates the opportunity to weigh in on it, the employee association. When it comes to an entry-level classification, that requirement or that approval is not necessary. So those are the 2 really significant factors in why we define jobs as entry level. So with that, if you have questions, I guess we have to go through a step of opening a public hearing and then
I would like to
consideration.
We're going to take them one at a time. We're going to open this item for a public hearing and a public comment. Is there anyone who has any public comment on this? No public comment. We're going to close the public hearing now. And is there any questions on any of these?
I just have one question. What is the significance of the listings in red versus the other? Well, that's one question. The other question is, are we talking about every one of these people that are, or every one of these classifications that are listed are subject to this resolution?
That's correct.
And that would apply to all 3 of the resolutions?
Yeah, yes.
And again, why are some of them in red?
The red indicates the classifications that have been added since the last time we did this resolution.
Okay.
I try to do this every couple of years, but unfortunately it's been more than that in December of 2013. So through council action and commission action, we've added classifications, we've eliminated some, and so it's those are just reflecting the changes that have
And that would incorporate the actions we've taken today to include police communications trainee, which we just previously discussed, and this power system trainee, which we approved as well.
Correct. And you'll note police communications operator, which formerly was the entrance level, is being taken away. So.
I would move for approval.
Second.
Move in approval, move in a second. Could we have roll call on the public hearing resolution entrance level classification, please?
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair Perrin.
Yes. I would like to open the public hearing. We've had discussions, Mr. Doyle. I don't know if but let's read it into the record first. What's next? Could you read that into the record?
Public hearing, resolution for 12-month probationary period classifications.
Mr. Chair, similar to the other one, these are classifications that we are declaring to be 12-month probation as opposed to 6 months. The vast majority of our jobs hold a 6-month probationary period. The ones that do not that we ask for 12 months typically are all of our managerial, mid-management, professional level positions, our executive positions, obviously, many of our public safety, certainly all of our sworn positions will carry a one-year probation. This list, similar to the previous item, shows the classifications that have been added to our list of jobs by city council action over the past few years. Have been refined. The classifications that have been eliminated are stricken, and again, this is similar to the last item. We would need a public hearing for this.
Okay. I'd like to go ahead and open the public hearing on the resolution of 12-month probation period classification. Anyone who would like to speak on this item? No one for oral communication. I would like to close the public hearing now on this particular item and take a motion for this resolution.
Move to approve.
Move to approve, Commissioner Manukian, seconded by Commissioner McCarty. Could we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair Karen.
Yes. What's next?
Public hearing, resolution for unclassified hourly classifications and positions.
Stuart.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, same issue here. This is a declaration of our, or I say a reaffirmation of our hourly part-time positions as unclassified at will. When I was saying earlier that it's very rare to have unclassified positions, I was of course referring to the salaried civil service ones. All of our hourly positions, our part-time positions, are declared unclassified for obvious reasons. Most of them are either seasonal, temporary, or just sort of as needed. When they're no longer needed, then we have to separate those employees, and therefore it would make no sense to have them as part of the classified service. So this, again, reflects just a reaffirmation of that principle, and really all of the fact that all of our hourly positions are considered unclassified. And there's a couple, again, that have been added since our last time. There's one that has been deleted, and again, this is done by council action. So.
All right. I would like to open this for a public hearing. Are there any comments on item number 3, resolution for unclassified hourly classification and positions? No one is here for an oral communication. I'm going to close the public hearing. Any comments by anyone? Is there any motion?
Move to approve.
Move to approve. Second. Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair Karen.
Yes. Items 14, 15, and 16 has been moved to the June meeting. What's next after?
Reports.
Mr. Doyle?
We just have the past 2 performance evaluations, much improved from our last month. We do have 1 second notice involving the city clerk. He was here. Mr. Chair, if you want to acknowledge.
Yeah, we actually have Artie Kasakian here from the clerk's office, and had asked, due to some personal matters, that he was not going to be able to stay here, but he wanted to come in here and tell us that he, as a respect to the commission, he wanted to appear before the hearing, but due to a personal matter with his child, he needed to leave. So he apologized and said that the item was already submitted to the HR, and that is no longer a past employee due item. So I just wanted to mention that in here. Besides that, I don't think we have any other seconds on this particular item. Any questions? What's next?
Civil Service Commission, staff comments.
Comments? I wanted to just make a quick comment. It's been a long time where, of course, every city manager, police chief, and an assistant city manager have their own place. But for the first time, we have a city manager, assistant city manager, and an incredible police chief that have come together. And this is probably the best of the best that I've seen, that I think we're going to have just an incredible time with our police department and the city due to their appointment and acceptance. So I just wanted to congratulate all of them and tell them that how happy I am that they're all where they need to be. Any other comments? All right, move to
Move to
adjourn.
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 Thank you, sir.